ASIPI en acción. Presentación de estudios y
Presentation of research work and special work. Jorge Chavarro. Workgroup Impact of Denominations of Origin and Geographical Indications in Social Development. Colombia. Luis Alonso García. Workgroup Denominations of Origin and Indications, Geographical Indications in the Economy and Social Development. Colombia. Mónica Bonnett. Workgroup Cannabis Industry and its Regulation in LATAM. Colombia. Maritza Reátegui, Workgroup Cannabis Industry and its Regulation in LATAM. Peru. Meloni, with the Workgroup Guaranteed Traditional Expressions, ETG, Peru. Moderator, Luis Henriquez, President of ASIPI, Venezuela.
Tú te sientas acá, Mónica y acá. Mónica y Chico.
Aló, aló. Bueno, buenos días.
Great. Thank you very much. We will start with the second panel for today. This is a panel where we will not do a keynote speech, but we want to review some content that has been put together by Jorge Chavarro, Andre Pomares, Luis Garcia, Mónica Bonnett, Maritza Reátegui, and Mr. Meloni. As you know, when we started this period, we set ourselves to put together a governance plan, and that governance plan was positioning or improve ASIPI's positioning. So we can improve its positioning, and we thought it was important to generate more content and specialized content. In this case, we have work done measuring the impact of geographical indications and denominations of origin in the economy and on society, and another two sets of work that touch on things that are somewhat innovative new things, like some of the research work on cannabis and its regulation in Latin America, and the booklet and the ETG research work. As you know, we only see this in Latin America, in Ecuador and Peru, and we want to hopefully generate this content, and this will allow us to present this structure in other countries and other regions in order to improve that positioning and in one way or another prove that intellectual property is useful or good, and important research work like the denominations of origin study are important because they measure the economic and social impact that is generated based on these structures. These are the three pieces of work that were done, and these are the three pieces of work that will be presented by the groups. So we will start with the denominations of origin study. This was done in Mexico, Colombia, and Peru. As you know, these are studies that have a cost. They have a cost, and initially we decided to do it in 3 countries. Hopefully in the future we can move forward and expand it to other countries like we did it when we did the brand impact study, impact on the economy. I will not go through their CVs for each of our presenters because it'll take us the whole day. And they're actually well-known people amongst all of us. So I will give the floor to Jorge Chavarro so he can start or tell us about what this work was like and what were the main results around it. Thank you very much, Luis Alejandro. Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I would like to recognize the ASIPI Executive Committee, and especially Luis Alejandro, who trusted me or entrusted me for doing this work. I wasn't actually prepared to do this because the economic component of it is very technical, very high level, so I apologize if there are any issues. Hopefully, we only have one or two economists and not three because, critics can be, the critique can be brutal. And I work with my colleagues and hopefully attempted to understand what an economic impact will look like when we take a look at denominations of origin and their impact on economic structures.
Okay.
So, some of the background information tells us that in the 20th century, denominations of origin protection started within our continent. It is important to say this because we link this to Europe, where they've been doing it for more than a century in all different legislations, jurisprudence, and doctrines. To us, it started in this century, so 20 years or so is what we've done so far with this. This study was focused on several criteria in three countries: Colombia, Mexico, and Peru, like Luis Alejandro said, because maybe they have a deeper legislation and a development that is faster than other countries, and this is a very specific legislation and very much similar throughout the three countries. So far, quite frankly, the question is the following. We've seen studies that generate argument so we can share with authorities and with companies in the private sector about what a denomination of origin is and what is it good for. With the spectrum, we then go into the 21st century and we ask ourselves, what is the impact of denominations of origin, or what are the real impacts in Latin America, at least? One of the first things that the new executive committee did when they started to do their work in late last year was make the decision to put together this study, set it in motion, and we tried to secure the different companies that were going to do this, and that is why they picked a company, Synetic. This is a Colombian company from my country, and they proved that they could do this. This company, Synetic, you see it there, they put together the impact research, and they convinced us that they had the ability to do this. But we had to pretty much give them a university lecture to make them understand what denominations of origin means before they started doing their work, because they needed this as a substract or as a basic element. The general objectives are an economic impact in these three countries and a specific impact in the measurement of quality of life and the economies of the communities that are there out in the field in rural areas, the real producers of these denominations of origin, and those who trade those products. So this study was done by Synetic, and they focus on two specific things. One is methodology, the quantitative focus, and the qualitative focus. This was done in March and April this year with 577 surveys on producers in those regions, in those countries, and they also surveyed 1,074 consumers. It says America, so not the entire American continent, but actually the United States of America and Europe. Most of the surveys were focused on Spain, the UK, and other countries, but most of the surveys were carried out in those countries. Through a data gathering process out in the field, they put it into these measurements. It's called a paper and pencil instrument. I'm not quite sure what the terminology is for it. Now, the qualitative report, which was focused on every single one of the companies that put together these products that come from denominations of origin. And here we see Colombia, Mexico, and Peru. We see the different denominations of origin. Bocadillo Veldeño, Café de Colombia, Cerámica del Carmen Viboral, Cangrejo Negro de Providencia. In Mexico, Tequila, Mezcal, Talavera, Amber de Chiapas, and Café de Chiapas. And in Peru, we did it with Pisco, Café Villarrica, and we talked to the office that gathers denominations of origin. The name of the institution is Indecopi. Indicators, we have some motivations, quality of life, and behavioral aspects. For these, satisfaction, pride, and the effort put in is very important for each of the people who are part of the supply chain. Quality of life, because it leads us to measure sanitation, the sanitary process in the population, the market, and prospecting new customers. And then on the other hand, behavioral, so meaning recommendations, revenue, and the willingness to continue doing this work or not. The results were reviewed for each of these indicators, and we can see that there is a population. This is a population that is specifically exposed to this market, and then there's another group that does not know about the situation at all. And the result of this is what was scored as the impact of denominations of origin. So talking to people who work directly with that product, the people who are aware of that denomination of origin, and then those who do not know about that denomination of origin. So here we have something called the denominations of origin impact analysis for LATAM. So here I would like to take you to the far right of the chart. There is a 25% impact. What you see in the amber or orange color versus the turquoise or green color, the users who are benefited from denominations of origin is the one in amber, and the one in green are the ones who are not benefited directly. And why am I asking you to take a look at the far right with the 25 mark? Because that is the one that gives us the result. After 34, if we subtract 10, that gives you the quality of life. So the measurement was the highest, and where people feel that there is an improvement in the quality of life thanks to denominations of origin. Now, as part of all the analysis that was done, there was a concept called continuity, and I mention this because it's in the amber color, and it tells us that there is a lot for us to work on still, because only 7% believe that their children, their kin, or their grandchildren will continue doing this. So there's a lot for us to see into the future. So the yellow arrows, the important thing here is the quality of life for people who work with denominations of origin, because it's actually marked with 27. That 27% is an important number. Or rather, 54 is what I meant to say. In green, that's the row where you have the total amounts. So quality of life is definitely recognized by them as something that is good for those who work with denominations of origin. Then you have 51, that 51 score. That means that there is an acknowledgement that people's revenue improve if they work directly with geographical indications. And then the next one is a 1 scored with 41, the top yellow arrow, and that is the creation of roads, schools, and hospitals. This to me is one of the most important ones because it is not limited only to perception, but actually, this is actually measured. So, where you see denominations of origin in the last 20 years, we were able to prove that the amount of kilometers in road building, there are more schools and more hospitals. Now, I will give the floor to Mario so he can keep going. Thank you, Jorge. So we held surveys with producers and consumers. About surveys with consumers, we see the low grade of knowledge that we see for denominations of origin, and we can see that more than half, 53%, of people who were asked, do you know what denomination of origin is? And they said no. And out of that percentage that know what denominations of origin are, more than half weren't able to specify what it is for, out of those who understood what it was. This happens in the 3 countries that were analyzed. And the rest of the consumers who can specify what a denomination of origin is, well, is associated to management of policies and avoid piracy. In a lesser way, they associate denominations of origin to prices or getting customers, developing certifications, quality control, or defending products abroad. It is interesting that denominations of origin are assigned to things that are not part of denominations of origin and will be forbidden as price fixing. And some of the functions that are most important when it comes to denominations of origin, like quality control, is barely mentioned at 4%. About the most associated function to when it comes to denominations of origin, and that is policy management. This is on the regulation around the product. Regarding the surveys that were conducted on consumers, U.S. consumers and European consumers, especially Spain and the U.K., and out of the more than 1,000 surveys conducted, 60%, 60, were actually conducted in the United States. These surveys were attempting to get the to understand how much knowledge people had about denominations of origin in Latin America. This was done in areas where they consume these products, and there was a pre-filter done whether they are consumers who consume products that are from abroad. 32% of consumers do not know denominations of origin from Latin America, and the other 68% see it as places in the world where a product was built, or they just understand it's a
El conocimiento es algo menor en productos.
When it comes to drinks, agricultural products is important, and a lot more on artwork. This is something we've considered as well for the study, and these are the pastel factors. These pastel factors have political components, social, technological, economic, ecological, and legal components, as we can see from the conclusions. Denominations of origin are in the right path, but we need to remember and be aware of the fact that these different contexts, political, economic, etc., what have you, influence the fact that producers do not see the full benefits that denominations of origin have. This Pestel analysis tells us that there is a lot of room for improvement so the denominations of origin can change the situation and change that perception around them when it comes to producers. So about the main issues or the most recurring themes in these surveys when it comes to producers, we found politicization of regulating authorities, the lack of technical and legal assistance to producers, little visibility of producing regions, lack of credit instruments, slow growth of exports, decay of tourism in production areas or regions, political and economic uncertainty because of armed conflict, and citizen insecurity. These are problems that, like I was saying, do affect this issue and do not let us or let them perceive all the benefits from denominations of origin. If these problems were to be solved, it can definitely be beneficial to associate these producers with regulating authorities. So now over to Luis Alonso. Good morning and thank you for having me so I can share this information that stems out of this report. The most important set of results that we have to highlight from denominations of origin for Mexico and Peru are the following. The study considered or identified 18 denominations of origin in Mexico and has focused the study on the tequila, mezcal, talavera, amber de Chiapas, and café de Chiapas operations. Clearly, Mexico is the leading country in Latin America when it comes to denominations of origin, and commercially speaking and institutionally speaking, it stands out with tequila and mezcal. A relevant aspect we should highlight is that 61% of producers who were surveyed out of all these denominations of origin indicated that they are satisfied because there is a lot more visibility for their products thanks to denominations of origin. And preserving cultural traditions and the development of abilities through technological tools that I believe is an important point, seeing how they highlight joint work and the use of technological tools in order to boost denominations of origin. This, of course, strengthens quality, competitiveness, and the fabric of society and culture in regions where different denominations of origin exist. However, something that is highlighted from a Synetics study is that 7% of producers who were surveyed expressed that they are dissatisfied for a series of reasons that are generated by working within a denomination of origin framework. They are actually listed mainly as the high costs of production and something that is relevant and that has been pinpointed not only with these denominations of origin, but actually in denominations of origin in different countries, is the lack of generational turnover. So children, the sons of these producers, sons and daughters, do not want to work in these industries. This is something to consider. Another relevant thing that is impacting the sustainability of denominations of origin is citizen insecurity and violence in certain regions where some denominations of origin products are produced. Now, organization and association when it comes to DOs in Mexico definitely show us an important leadership compared to the rest of the region. Another piece of information that's important is that 40% of the people surveyed indicated that they are part of a denomination of origin, and in general the impact upon entering a denomination of origin is above 15%, seen as a positive thing. So that is trading goods abroad and a better organization as we see association and regulatory structures, and all of this leverages this growth when it comes to denominations of origin. In the case of Peru, the study identified the 11 denominations of origin that Peru has that have been declared, but the study focuses on 2 of them, Villarrica, Café de Villarrica, and Pisco. These 2 denominations of origin, because in one way or another, there is some type of association around these denominations of origin. Within some of the important information that we should mention is that 40% of producers are satisfied by being a part of denominations of origin, and they highlight the benefits, like, for example, the increase in the demand for the product thanks to using denominations of origin by 87% of the responses, better financing and profitability, that's 76%, and also, and this is part of most of the denominations of origin, supporting the preservation of pride and the authenticity of products by 62%. However, there are still ongoing concerns around association and institutionality around denominations of origin, and citizen insecurity continues to be a relevant factor when it comes to denominations of origin in Peru. About the impact of revenue and how much this is impacting their industries, 50% are saying that their revenue is improving with denominations of origin, and 46% is saying that, give or take, a bit, maybe good, maybe not so good, and 43% are saying that there is no improvement. This is because of the lack of understanding what denominations of origin are, the lack of support from the state in a vision trying to boost these legal structures, and association as a relevant factor for the success of these type of legal structures. Thank you.
Now we'll move on to Colombia, where we have 29 denominations of origin that have been recognized. Café de Colombia, Cerámica, Bocadillo. 57% of the producers declared that they are satisfied with their work due to increased visibility of their products, possibility of maintaining and continuing cultural traditions, develop skills through the incorporation of technological tools. And 26% of the producers perceive an effect, an improvement in their quality of life. 23% express deep pride due to the production associated with those. 7% in turn expresses dissatisfaction of the activity and say that above all it's due to the production costs, decrease of labor, and internal conflicts. Now we prepared in the working group some conclusions in order for ASIPI, which are: there is an awareness among us that we must provide more time to further mature the concept of denomination of origin. Is something truly new, it's recent. And then we recommend that we insist with the producers that what is essential is the quality of the products, maintain it. Then incentivize production lines of what already exists to promote consumer loyalty, implement marketing strategies, establish direct relation between the consumer and loyalty programs. The second conclusion is existence of EOs that benefit a wide array of producers, truly compared to the population of each one of their countries. This means an important percentage of those devoted to that. Therefore, the recommendation: implement campaigns to inform on the value and importance of the denominations, carry out community events and programs that explain how denominations contribute to quality, and lastly, support sustainable development, promoting initiatives that integrate respectful practices that respect the environment. The third conclusion, the obstacles for the success of denominations of origin are administrative, technological, economic, social, legal, and political factors. Today we have a lot of obstacles. It's recommended that we create awareness among those responsible for public policies regarding their benefits, and there is something very important because it's the path that will be taken by ASIPI in 2025. Reach the governments in order to convince them that it is necessary that in each one of our Latin American countries where we have a denomination of origin, we generate public policies. Currently, in Latin America, we did not find serious, real, efficient public policies to benefit definition of origin. To have a roadmap that truly formulate something that is well coordinated and that can be effectively evaluated. And lastly, association, these results show us, after all the studies, that this is the most important concept that goes, of course, led by all the regulatory body councils in the countries. They have different names in different places. We call them regulatory councils. They're perhaps the best known, so that they can maintain the quality standards. Thank you. Hello. Well, I want to thank all of you, Jorge, for leading the group, and all collaborators of this work: Eduardo Kleinberg, Alfonso Rivera, Maria Camila Flores, Henriquez, Ricardo Gordon, Mario Pomares, Alonso García, and Emilia Horta, for all the work. It was a complete work year that assumed the challenge, and here we have the outcomes. Now we just have to go out to the street to comment these results and generate impact with this study. So thank you very much to all of you. I now give the floor to Mónica Bonnett, who led, along with Maritza Reátegui, the study on cannabis industry and its regulation in LATAM. Thank you very much, Luis. Good morning, everybody. I would like to especially thank Luis, who, I'll just give you an anecdote. I trapped him in a corridor in a meeting to open new channels of discussion and knowledge for our association, and of course new business opportunities for all the partners. And Luis was very receptive. I don't know how to move the presentation here. Luis was very receptive, and we started 2 years ago to present a document to explain and motivate why we should carry out the study on legislation and map what do we have in terms of cannabis in different Latin American countries. So the goal of the study basically was to be able to establish which countries in Latin America have legislation, right? How does the legislation look in terms of sanitary registry, and how can we help the cannabis industry? This would not have been possible without the collaboration of all the companies we're mentioning, and I would like to mention them one by one because it's a document where I was an editor, I was a collaborator, I was a coordinator, I participated in writing the chapter for Colombia, but this truly is a book that is done by 1,000 hands with the efforts and time of each one of the persons named in this slide, that I would like to thank infinitely for their time and dedication. The document is split into 6 parts. The first one is the introduction of the country, the second one, the protection of medicinal cannabis, the protection of industrial use, the protection of recreational use, the challenges that the topic faces in regulatory topics, and the challenges and perspectives faced by the industry in industrial property topics. There are many conclusions out of this document, and you will find in the document that they're close to 120, 110 pages. Each country is highly detailed, but I would like to focus on three main ones. The first conclusion is that Latin America, surprisingly, is having more new legislation in each one of their countries regarding cannabis. Most of them, we have almost all of them, medicinal use, some industrial use, and only Uruguay, recreational use. In Central America, the only two countries that have medicinal use legislation are Costa Rica and Panama. And they're in South America, they're pending Bolivia joining with legislation. The countries that don't have a legislation at this time, well, truly are working in legislative lobbying in order to get there. There's great efforts that are being made. Another one of the great conclusions is that there is no legislation in terms of industrial property or regulatory topics specifically for the cannabis industry. This poses a problem because definitely it's a very specific industry. The industry has had a lot of problems in some countries to be able to obtain the brand registries, and they're limited with scripted words like cannabis, marijuana, etc., and regulatory topics. Well, evidently, the normal legislation is being applied to obtain sanitary registration for food, cosmetics, beverages, and the authorities send this invitation for that the next step of the study be to reach authorities and be able to explain the needs out there in terms of sanitary registration, regulatory registration, and industrial property. The last conclusion is that there's a great prevention, evidently, and it started in Colombia as well, that in 2017, well, it was quite a controversial when the standard was enacted on the medicinal use of cannabis. There's a lot of work to do, a lot of education, definitely, to understand that this is a medicinal plant and that there is recreational use as well, but there should be a responsible use of the plant, that consumers as well as the industry as well as government entities may understand it, and we can thus be able to provide greater growth to this industry. We give the floor now to Maritza Reátegui so she can tell us about the second part of this work. Good morning. Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank ASIPI for the creation of the working group and for inviting me to participate in this project. What Mónica Bonnett, my colleague, mentioned is the first part, which is the publication of the whole study of regulations in Latin America regarding cannabis. And the second part is to do something quicker and more effective in order to always be able to coordinate topics through the interactive map. If you could move the presentation, please. What is important when defining this interactive map, that in a quick, easy, and speedy way we know what are the intellectual property regulations and sanitary regulations we have in Latin America regarding cannabis. There are three trends that we have in cannabis. Medicinal use that has had the greatest development in most of the countries in Latin America. Recreational use that we know that in Latin America we only have it in Uruguay. And the third one that sometimes we don't pay so much attention to, which is industrial use of cannabis. Industrial use of cannabis may be in textiles, it could be in construction materials. Recently we had an event where some producer was commenting a lot on the topic that they didn't use cotton so much, but they were using cannabis more because this gave you a 20% lower use in water, and evidently was more ecological than using only cotton. So there's a series of uses that take place through what we know as hemp for industrial use. Another interesting topic is that the first part that Monica points out is an indication where they give you an overview of regulations, but we also have clients that ask us, oh, in this country, is it possible to protect intellectual property for cannabis? What is the most efficient way to go into a country in Latin America with cannabis? For example, in Colombia, there's a lot of license for production of cannabis. In Peru, you can go through the sanitary registration or the magistral formulas. Those are the ones that are carried out in the pharmacies that are authorized in our country. So how do we do business and how to carry out the intellectual aspects in each one of our countries? In other words, when a customer asks, how can I go into the specific country, and that's what we're looking for with interactive map. You'll provide the answers of what are the most appealing markets. If you want to have a production license, if you want to import a drug, what is the way to enter a sanitary registration of a natural product to use in health, which is not a medication. So that's what we look for in the interactive map, so you can verify in each one of the regulation if there's a patent protection topic, or what is the topic, or what's happening with the brands, if there's anything in vegetable varieties. Evidently, none of this would be possible without the support of all the ASIPI partners that have participated in this, the possibility of participating in the interactive map. Just like Monica in the publication, there are studies that there's been participation in both projects and some that they have not taken place. All this contribution of filling these questionnaires and the reading of this interactive map be very swift. What is the structure we have of the interactive map? The first part is intellectual property. These are basic questions of whether there's a patent or not for cannabis. How do we discuss the topic of brands with cannabis and the vegetable varieties? So by just clicking in the interactive map, you'll be able to have this information first, and if you want more information, you can go into the publication to see the regulation in each one of these countries. Here's simply an image. I believe that most of us know that under cannabis evidently is within the topic of the uses and customs, right? I mean, the topic of how do we analyze the brands, and that is different from country to country. Here I simply putting on some examples of the brands with cannabis for cigarettes, for different types of brands and services that are taking place in some countries, and we're allowing the registry of some brands with cannabis. Then the other structure that the interactive map has is related to the topics what has to do with sanitary regulations, because of course what I'm always say is let's protect intellectual property, but if that product cannot enter the market, the intellectual property is useless because you cannot place that product in the market. Then when we talk about cannabis topics, it's a product that you want to put into the market and has to go through all the sanitary regulation process. You have to know what is the regulation, what type of licenses. It's quite interesting because in cannabis you have a lot of research licenses given out under health and agro, and these projects are becoming more dynamic throughout all Latin America with the licenses given to the universities and institutes, and then the sanitary registrations. This allows you to make visible whether it's an investment topic or not in the country, because if there's no sanitary registration, it's because those products are not coming into the country. And another way also is through the magistral formulas. You know that these formulas do not have sanitary registration because they're carried out in the drugstores. But if they have them in these countries, it's because they're importing the inputs, and that part is extremely important that we develop it. Another topic that is very easy to go in and has a reduced sanitary risk is cosmetics. In Colombia and Uruguay it was very important. It's interesting because it allows you to go into the country quickly. We know we have decision 833 that allows the regulation of cosmetics in the Andean community, and we have a special situation with Peru that the regulatory authorities are quite strict. And a topic that also when we approach cannabis topic is there's a lot of prejudice in the public and the private sector. And another topic that is quite interesting when you also coordinate with the companies is that this is a highly regulated market. And when the product enters the country, there should be a training and education among health professionals, because medicinal use cannabis only enters into the territory when they're recommended by the health professionals, and these in turn are trained by the companies. Most of the cannabis companies that come into our countries are companies that are in the stock market. They have compliance standards, they have topics, they're very law regulation abiding, so we have to be careful with the regulations that they can enter. There's free zones for imports and exports. The interesting part, how do you enter that market? So very quickly in the map you'll be able to have this information. What we want this to be is a quick consultation tool for all those who want to go into the cannabis topic. What we'll do with a working group, with those who have already participated in the project, is that we continue updating that information, be in contact so that this is always updated. Currently we have 20 countries, approximately 20 countries that are participating in the interactive map, and the idea is to include other countries so that this map continues to grow. And thank you very much for listening to us and for participating in the working group, to everybody who has been in this beautiful project. I would like to thank both of you, Monica, for her insistence of chasing me down the corridors of that event, for her proposal, of course, and enthusiasm that when we entrusted on her the work, she decided to lead it, and Maritza as well, for all her support in this work and this map. That will be great. Maritza, well, she has done a lot of work in ASIPI. She must have a collection of 4 publications in regulatory topics, and the truth is that every time we ask you for something, you always come through. So thank you very much. And let's go to the last of the work that we'll be showing today. This was carried out by Ray Meloni with the help of a professor from the university, and Yugana also collaborated. This work is on guaranteed traditional specialties, and the publication is called A Great Opportunity for Economic Development and Social Development in Latin America. Ray? Good morning. Thank you, Luis. The truth is that I must congratulate you once again for your leadership, the leadership of the Executive Committee of the ASIPI. You've been able to position very strongly ASIPI as a generator of content specialized intellectual property. Congratulations for that. You can see the leadership there. Well, I was entrusted to work on an interesting topic. After listening to Manolo de Santis talk about artificial intelligence, you become concerned, and I was talking to Manolo and I was telling him that we're within the geographical indications, and we're swimming against the current, because while AI is going one way, it seems that we are trying to protect traditions, but also quality, and that was an important topic. I believe that today consumers, precisely at this point in time, in modern times, they're willing to pay a bit more for a product that has a story to tell, that is deeply rooted, culturally rooted, and sets a difference for some products. I was interested to see what was happening in this regard, see the state of affairs in the. And this is not an inspiration of Andean law or Latin American law, but this truly is something that we've adopted rather, from the European legislation, right? The Europeans already have legislation on guaranteed traditional specialties, and we in Peru, what we did is that we had somewhat adopted the topic. I was working in the COPI, the promotion agency of Peru, from Peru, entrusted me to develop an instrument to be able to standardize the recipes of the quality of Peruvian gastronomy, which is currently in the top 10 of gastronomies worldwide, which is a source of great pride for Peru. And it's helping us in an interesting way to generate investments, but also generate in one way or the other money in our country. My country mostly has an economic development based on extraction economies. We have mining, first of all, then fishing, fisheries, well, agro-industry, but now we're generating a lot of revenues from tourism and specifically the gastronomic tourism. So this is generating obviously virtuous circles. It's intense, labor intense, and quality intense as well. So we started to look closely into the traditional guaranteed practices to protect the tradition, the development of recipes that are typically Peruvian. So we'll see how this guaranteed traditional expression will serve us to protect that. The development of the recipes we have in Peru, and obviously after that we'll extend this to other countries. We have to say that in Latin America, apart from Europe, only, let's say, Ecuador has a regulation, and Colombia has expressly declared its will to work in the regulation of this CTG, but there is no express regulation yet, which will make me understand that at some time this should perhaps be a reason for perhaps an Andean decision in the Andean Community Secretariat. Perhaps we could discuss these topics to generate benefits for all. Because if there is no international regulation, it will be difficult to protect only in some countries. We need the recognition and somehow harmonized legislation to have protection in several territories. What has been done, what is traditional, this wood which is used in market and trade in the countries, if in 20-25 years, the traditional recipes that have been used in the market. The most known ones at the European level is the Napolitan pizza and Serrano ham, which are differentiation tools that will help right in the revenues of agricultural producers, but also of the chefs and cooks, which in one way or the other will help us to reivindicate the paternity of some recipes. And this is normal and natural because as a result of international migration, going back and forth, we've had, let's say, sometimes we went to Europe and sometimes Europeans come this way and we've been exchanging recipes. The truth is that nobody obviously wants to take ownership of nobody's traditional recipes, but this is just to put things in order and reinstate the paternity of each one of the recipes and the benefit of local producers. Who can request this guaranteed traditional specialties? Only one. The states themselves, they can do it in writing. Other producers who are directly involved in the elaboration, transformation of these products, whose names are going to be registered in the case of Peru, and also in the case of Ecuador, unlike Europe, then the title is in the hands of the Peruvian state. Therefore, we decided to take this type of protection and expecting that at some time there will be the producers through corporations that we mentioned in the case of the study take control over this, and currently the competent intellectual property authorities are the ones that carry forward the protection of this type of recognition. An important topic that, unlike what happens in Europe, Peru has declared that guaranteed traditional specialties are industrial property tools. In Europe, they take as tools for identifying quality. They see that in the labeling, and this is an interesting topic. We can discuss it at some point, but it was carried out specifically so that Indecopi is the one competent in the development and the observance of the rights. What you see here on top is the seal, the Peruvian seal used in the market, and guaranteed traditional specialty that is in the European context. So every time that we're going to use it in a restaurant, you're going to have a traditional Peruvian dish recognized through a guaranteed traditional specialty. Well, obviously, you have the right to use this stamp. This doesn't stop innovation at all. It's not that you cannot elaborate new dishes based on traditional recipes, but quite the contrary. If you want to elaborate a traditional recipe, well, use the seal, and if not, you can continue to innovate and use all the recipes out there in these type of dishes. The rights over observance and protection are protected, obviously, against all undue use. If you want to use the seal, but you're not your non-compliance with respect to raw materials of the recipes, obviously they deserve a sanction, right? But obviously all are allowed to use it as long as you follow the recipes. We understand, the steering council of ASIPI also understands that this is a great opportunity for Latin America, for all the countries. I put here three photographs of the same product. If you look at this, those who know about the topic, you will realize that each one of these are ceviches. The one on the left in your screen will be traditional, typical Panamanian ceviche. The one in the center is Ecuadorian one, and the one to the right is the Peruvian ceviche. And you'll say, well, how can you identify them? Well, basically, the Peruvian ceviche does not have avocado, right? And the Peruvian ceviche, if you look into it, given the color of the fish, is not cooked in lemon. It's eaten raw, okay, with a lemon on top, so you can quickly see the color of the fish and know whether it's just a Peruvian ceviche or not. So I believe that this tool will help us to see the value of the live culture of our people, which is basically gastronomy. It will be able to protect the quality of our natural products, because the gastronomy of each one of the countries is positioned through, let's say, the quality of the inputs, to elaborate on the tradition, of course, and also the protection of the cooks, and will allow it to generate virtuous circles as of gastronomic tourism, okay? I want to leave you with this video so you can see how in Peru, let's say in an organized manner, we've developed a thrust for Peruvian gastronomy, and obviously with this we want to attract tourism into our country.
Mi historia comienza a escribirse hace miles de años, y es una historia llena de peculiaridades, de fusiones, de variedades, de colores y sabores. Es sobre todo una historia de amor, de inventar, de mezclar, de aprender, de experimentar, de crear.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ray. You had the challenge and you took it up, and thank you for having ended within the time frame with this work. We had no questions considered, but I don't know if there's any questions or any comments. Otherwise, we'll stop here. Once again, thank you everybody, Luis Alonso, Jorge, Mario, Mónica, Maritza, and Ray for having joined us here, and the next mission is to disseminate this content, so thank you everybody.